please just remember to mute your mics if you're not chatting. It'll help with feedback. All right, Mr. Chairman.
Are we ready?
All set.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. And Angela, can you verify a quorum or who's on so we know?
I can. Currently, all trustees except for Joe Gagne are present.
Terrific. Well, welcome.
Expect Joe to join.
Welcome, everyone. And we continue to live in this interesting virtual meeting world, which is, we go from one Zoom to another. I know it's a challenging thing. But thanks to everyone for participating. As you know, we're here to consider the COVID-19 health and safety operational plan that has been developed by the university in response to executive action taken by the governor. We took public comment for this meeting, and I think all of you have received that. You should have received all of it, including a summary this morning. So I trust we all had a chance to look at it. We will not really present that or read it, but we have directed some of the questions that require a technical or expert kind of response or reaction to the people on the campus who can best answer or comment on some of those specific questions. So at some point, you will hear some answers directed at some of the questions that were made. I would just like to say, I'd like to remind everyone that this has been an enormously complicated process. President Schill has done a great job with his team of putting together what is a very comprehensive expected, and all of you, I think all of the trustees were involved in several meetings and several times on early drafts and partial drafts of this document. So this is something that the trustees have been significantly involved in to date, and will continue to be. This document, because we live in a time when change is sort of a day-to-day, we learn something new daily that might impact our plan that we're going to review. And so we do formally and routinely at every board meeting, but we know from how President Schill has been leading this that it'll be reviewed more often than that. And if new information comes to the university that causes us to have to adjust this plan, I'm sure Mike Schill and others will promptly inform the board and make whatever adjustments are required. Everything about this plan is based on meeting and surpassing the health and safety concerns of the students, the faculty, the community, the Eugene community. So it is sitting squarely on that, and only secondarily on financial issues. And I think it's very important that we all recognize and understand that. And Mike has been party to a number of conversations with the board where we've been very clear that this is not about saving the budget. This is about doing what is best from a health and safety standpoint, while trying to honor the commitment of the university. So I think the way we're going to proceed here is Mike and Patrick are going to lead this discussion, and the board will, I know some trustees have questions. Why don't we, Mike, you and Patrick, figure out a good time periodically to see if a question should be asked and answered then, or shall we can just hold them till the two of you complete your comments, if that works out best. But we'll leave that up to you, Michael.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just going to, are you getting it?
Yes.
Yeah, Chuck, would you mind while the president and provost are speaking, just muting your mic?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'll turn my video off.
I think
Does that help?
The microphone too would be great.
Okay, I'll go in the next room.
All right, thank you, Chuck. I'm going to begin by just saying thank you to the hundreds of faculty members, administrators, staff members who have worked tirelessly to put this plan together for the fall term. They have had to navigate incredible uncertainty and planning for a number of different scenarios. And I'm just impressed with their perseverance, their determination, and I'm inspired by their commitment to our students and the mission of the university. Now, Patrick in a moment is going to talk more about how the faculty is preparing for fall, but part of what I want to do is thank the staff and everyone who's building this program and who's worked throughout the summer to really make this a plan that we can be proud of. None of this would be doable without their incredible efforts. I want to specifically thank, and I'm being very careful not to single people out, but I want to thank Andre Leduc, who is sort of leading this effort as our Chief Resilience Officer. Also, I want to make a special thank you to Greg Shabram, Leslie Lev, and Bill Cresco. You're going to hear from Leslie in a bit, but they basically dropped everything that was on their plate to work on testing and to really put us in the position where we are going to be able in our dormitories and our residence halls to test everyone and then retest everyone within 5 or 7 days. And ultimately, we will, thanks to their efforts, be able to increase our testing capacity so we're able to do thousands of tests a day. So I'm just really, really grateful to that. That was something we didn't ask. They just volunteered and stood up, and very grateful. Let me tell you a little bit about the plan. The University of Oregon's COVID-19 health and safety plan is first and foremost based upon our commitment, as Chuck said, to safeguard the health and safety of our university community. Back in the spring, when we first started talking about this, and every opportunity since, we have said that we are going to be guided by our concern for the health and safety of our students, of our faculty and staff, and also, very importantly, by science. This plan, the plan that we're going to talk about today, takes a comprehensive approach to COVID-19 by monitoring health indicators, by reducing the likelihood of the virus spreading, by instituting testing, contact tracing, and isolation and quarantine protocols, and by requiring and reinforcing behavioral expectations for members of our community. Now, while we're working to address the challenge of the virus, this plan will allow us to remain focused on our core missions of teaching and research. And by adjusting our operations using physical distancing and safety protocols, we're going to be able to continue supporting our students, supporting their ability to move forward in their educational careers, and also be able to resume our research activities in a phased approach. But one thing I want to say is, it is important to remember, we do not control the virus. The situation will almost certainly continue to change as it's done ever since March. Knowing that we are going to need to remain flexible, the plan details a number of triggers that would move the university between alert levels and also cause us to alter our campus operations. Now, cases in Lane County, thank God, have remained relatively low, but there is always a chance that that could change. And our incident management team continues to work closely with the Lane County Public Health Authority to monitor health trends in the community and assess the situation. And we have gotten tremendous real cooperation and partnerships from our Lane County as well as our state partners, and it's been really terrific. Our mitigation strategies are going to be focused on reducing the spread of the virus, but should cases increase on campus or in the surrounding community, we're going to be able to adjust our operations quickly and appropriately. And I believe that together we will succeed in keeping our community healthy, but only if we work together. That means wearing masks, staying 6 feet apart, regularly performing a symptom self-check, and washing our hands. This plan only works if each of us takes it upon ourselves and each other to work very diligently, because we can beat COVID-19 when we return to campus, but we're all going to have to work hard. So again, I want to thank everybody, thank the faculty, thank our staff, our administrators, and the board who has supported us tremendously as we went about this effort. And what I'd like to do now is ask Patrick to really get to some of the meat of the plan and give us an update on fall term instruction. Patrick?
Thank you very much, President Chill, and thanks to all members of the board for joining us, as well as anyone else who's joining us in the stream. I want to echo, of course, my thanks for everyone. And I would say that obviously these are trying times, but the university has responded in amazing ways. And at least from an administrative point of view, I think that we have a connectivity and a cooperation across the entire campus that would not have been exposed otherwise. And so much like good exercise, which I know that President is a huge proponent of, this has really strengthened the sinew of the whole institution. And we all know each other very well. We're in meetings constantly. And I think at the end of the day, as we look forward, that will make us stronger University of Oregon. So I do want to create a slight distinction between the safety plan and the fall, because I think we're here to approve the safety plan, and it's comprehensive and global and approaches a variety of situations. And Andre will probably speak to this more insightfully. So from the academic side of things, the safety plan includes the capacity and our ability to teach in person in a safe way. And I could go into a lot of detail of that, but I won't. But suffice it to say that we have analyzed every single space on this campus. We worked with all of our deans. Classroom, people tend to think about a university from the classroom lecture environment, and we certainly have analyzed all those spaces. We also have a lot of specialized needs. For instance, we need to know how much aerosol a clarinet produces, for instance, and what is the safe distance for that kind of usage. And we have done that analysis. So we are well prepared in multiple dimensions. One is that we've layered just the basic distancing requirements across every single space in the university, and then had that confirmed by the fire marshals. And we've mapped all of those things out so we know what every room can support from a best practices guideline. On top of that, from the educational point of view, we've upgraded more than 100 classrooms in terms of supporting electronic delivery of courses and plexiglass and those kinds of things. And then there is also enhanced HVAC production, which is, we know, is an important part of the safety. So we have a core set of class rooms as well as other specialized spaces that are defined and are ready for in-person instruction as the overall context of the pandemic allows. And so a lot of the safety document goes over that. And so as you approve this, you can imagine this is also forward-looking as well as where we are at this moment in time. For the fall, and I won't go into any details because we already laid that out just yesterday, we have made the decision that we will be mostly remote. And so many of these classrooms that we've defined their usage will not be fully utilized, at least for classroom spaces. They may be used for other capacities. For instance, now that we're not teaching classes, they provide us the ability to spread out other activities on campus, for instance, potentially for study spaces for students and those kinds of activities. But there will be a subset of courses that we hope to, and these are the courses that are especially enhanced by in-person, and so laboratory, creative practice, performative courses, those kinds of things. And we're in the process of figuring out exactly how to prioritize those with our deans and department heads as we implement that. So our hope and our plan is to create a new version of the class schedule by next Friday. And Jennifer Borden is on the call here. She has been really leading the charge on all the academic enterprise aspects of things, as well as making sure that as we shift to remote again, that we have made a huge investment in increasing support and quality of our online offerings and all of our remote offerings as well. And so we have not stood idly by while we're deciding what to do. We have made huge investments both in terms of facilities and in faculty support. So I think I'll leave it at that because we only have a certain amount of time, and I do want to provide time for questions.
So are there questions? I think, Jimmy, you had a question, I think, and Catherine, I know you did. So why don't we start, Jimmy, with you and your question.
Sure. So let's go right off the bat. I'm curious to hear some more information about our residence halls and infection rates. So 2 parts. What is the number of infections that would prompt us to send students home? I think we all saw North Carolina State announce just yesterday that they were giving their students 10 days to leave campus. So I'm curious, what does that number look like for us? If we are in that situation, will we require students who have tested positive to stay on campus? And if not, are we concerned about risk or liability for the institution if we send those students home?
I wonder if Andre would be willing to address that one.
Sure, I'm happy to address that. So one of the things that we've put in place with kind of the overarching safety plan is how do we make sure that our students, as they arrive into Eugene, the students living on campus are not carrying extra baggage, that being COVID. And so, I know that Leslie Lev is on and can speak more to what we're doing with the testing program. But the first part of that, to the point of kind of thinking about infection rates, is we really want to do a comprehensive screening. And a lot of campuses are doing this. I'm very confident, and we are doing a very high level of testing screening that we're not doing antigen. We are actually looking for active virus. And the intent there is, as they move in, a very detailed kind of process for our students, understanding that they will be tested, and in between the time that they're tested and they get the results, that they are to isolate or quarantine until they get the results. And then in the plan, a certain percent, and actually quite frankly, a whole hall has been set aside. So if a student right at the get-go would come in and has a positive test, and let's say that they're out of state or something, we already have Barnhart set up to be an isolation and quarantine facility so that they can isolate and quarantine in that facility. But there'll also be options for, of course, if the student lives nearby and wants to do that at home, they would be able to do that. Then to your question about infection rates. So again, the first goal is being very thoughtful and doing a very kind of slow pace. We talked about this back in spring of going slow using science. So if we know we can start with a baseline within our residential halls of knowing and catching potential carriers of COVID, then isolate and treat. And then what that will turn into, and Leslie can speak more of, during the term, we will be doing not only the initial test and move-in, but then a repeat test, as Mike, as the president had stated, and then there will be a monitoring protocol. So again, Jimmy, I think our point is we want to be ahead of it so that we don't get into those upper thresholds. As far as the thresholds of percent, we were really looking at, we have worked with the county on setting kind of thresholds of percent positive and infection rates. And so it isn't that part of, oh my gosh, we're up to 10% infection, now we need to shut down. It's really about how can we contain it. And this is, we're in a reality where we need to, have processes in place where even if our numbers go up, which we'll expect them to go up when we test just from a certain amount of prevalence, it's really about the capacity to take care of those students, whether that's on our property and on campus under our care, or if they go home and then come back. But then it's really, if we start to see things where we're seeing above 5%, prevalence, 7, 10, it's more of, that's where you're applying the brakes. At 10%, it's a pretty much standard of like, we've got to look at, are we controlling this? And so the reason that it's a long-winded answer to that question is it's about how we do this in the beginning of making sure that we have confidence in the testing that we're using to really identify people that might be carriers but are asymptomatic beforehand, and then isolate those individuals so that we kind of have a handle on the spread. And that's why those numbers for what would turn us, meaning change operations for the campus, it really is a combination of, is that, the viral load, meaning, when you think of our on campus, is that greater than what's in the community? And if so, it isn't an immediate, send everybody home. It's, can we contain? Do we have enough capacity to take care of those individuals? And we are going to be monitoring that very closely so that we don't have to do a knee-jerk reaction to this has exceeded our capacity and now we immediately have to shut down and do something dramatic. So again, we are laying out those plans that all of that will be done in concert very closely with County Public Health and looking at the testing. I should be clear that our testing strategies and capacities are operating underneath the county. So we are lockstep with them in how we are doing this. And again, we've set up kind of a monitoring, really a COVID community board monitoring that's public facing, that people can see where those capacities are. So how many students we might have in isolation on our residence halls and how many we would have in quarantine. But the first goal is do it right by that initial screening so we know what people are bringing with them. And then the continued monitoring to see if anybody's bringing a special package back from being out on campus or being in the community. And the goal is then, test, trace, contain, and treat. And so it's not there isn't a magic number, but I can tell you once you get over that 7-10%, but the goal is we should see those numbers rising so we don't see a spike that kind of catches us off guard.
Let me ask whether Leslie, do you have anything to add?
Andre, you covered that really well. Maybe I'll just hit 2 key points, which I think the retest that both Andre and the president have mentioned are critical. If you look at other institutions that had major outbreaks, they either didn't test upon entry or they didn't do a retest. And so that's the reason for our retest goal, preferably 4 or 5 days later, because you may have missed no test is 100% perfect, or someone may have contracted a virus the day they arrived and it wasn't caught that first test. So I think that's a critical element of the plan, is to do this retest kind of 3, 4, 5, 6 days after the first test. And then another element I'll highlight is that in this kind of surveillance ongoing testing, we'd really like to prioritize that for those who are essentially, when you have a positive case and they're contact traced, testing those folks in that circle that were contact traced, because what we're seeing in Lane County and in other counties is that the vast majority of new cases are coming from someone who tested positive. So if we can lock in on that, and whenever there is a known positive, allocate our available testing first to those known contacts of that person, that no strategy is perfect, but that will help us get ahead of spread in a more reliable way. Thanks.
Thank you.
And Jimmy, you're okay with, or do you have a follow-up to your question?
Yeah, I guess I would just ask, are we confident that we're doing something different than these other institutions where we are seeing them, where I assume they have the best of plans start and their dorms quickly get out of control? I'm just curious, what is different about our plan that we're implementing than something like UNC or UN State?
I can speak to that. I think there are two fundamental differences. The first was your assumption that they had the best of plans, which I think Leslie just addressed, that maybe that is not consistent across institutions. And we see a lot of institutions that have essentially no testing as part of their planning. So I do think there's a lot of heterogeneity there. The other thing is, quite frankly, the local context, both mostly the public health context, but also political, I gotta say. And that is, every single measure is totally dependent on what the background rate of infection is. And as that becomes low, then it's much easier to stay on top of it. It's a very strong exponential multiplier. And so we are fortunate in Lane County that it's very low and going down right now. So we're in good shape. We're also very cognizant of our responsibility to try to keep it low. And that's where, especially in the dorm move-in, we're able to, as people come from other regions, we'd be able to catch it. And this will be another part of the question. Then the question is, what are students doing? And that is another aspect of this. But I think within the dorms, it's a different situation. It's then a question of what the overall student body is doing. And remember, we, North Carolina State, Notre Dame, all those schools were in person also, and we are fundamentally distinct in this case from that. So we have de-densified the campus, and then we're also creating controlled environments on campus. Will we succeed? I don't know 100%. We cannot guarantee anything at this time, but we're doing the best practices we can to try to make it succeed. It is possible to be overly risk averse, I have to say, and so we are trying to find that balance.
Okay, Catherine, you had a question, I believe.
Yeah, so I actually have two more general comments. I don't know if there's actually really specific answers to them, more so than, I guess, issues I wanted to array, kind of show or kind of talk about. So first, I just want to say that if we do plan to come back and have any form of on-campus learning, something that I stressed to others was just the importance of having building hours posted appropriately online and on campus buildings. A huge struggle for a lot of students, especially students that have to travel to campus, is not knowing when a lot of the departmental buildings open and close. While we have hours posted for buildings like Lillis Hall, as it's a widely utilized hall, and other things like the libraries, we do not have that for many other buildings like Straub Hall, Cuestas Hall, Klamath Hall. So many do not have their hours appropriately posted on any form of online site or in person. So if we do need to obviously expect students to social distance and to take up room possibly in other buildings to also sit and study in, then we need to make sure that we have that information posted for them, and maybe even extend building hours or work with students to try to get them space to study in if they have jobs or kind of schedules that prevent them from being on campus during the 8 to 5 p.m. classic college class time that we often put things in. My second comment is mainly relating to the safety of dorm housing. I think it kind of partially relates to what Jimmy brought up recently at the very end. I just don't feel that having students in dorm housing is a very safe choice in the end. I think while the biggest issue that students have raised to me for having housing is mainly for students in unsafe households that often seek freshman year living housing, or even just continue in living in dorm housing or around the Eugene area housing even after freshman year because of other unsafe living situations that they've previously been in. And while I believe that is incredibly important, and UO does need to help those students get affordable housing in the area and help locate them at, I do not think that opening the dorms is the way to do that, unless there was something so severe or a large amount that could equate to opening one dorm hall to house and take care of those individuals. Reasons why I believe that this is a bad idea is because students, especially freshmen, will still want to leave the dorm hall even after a mandatory quarantine or isolation. They will still want to go and see the city of Eugene. They will still want to go downtown and explore around the area. They will want to go inside fraternity and sorority houses. They will want to go to the events that are normally hosted. That may still be hosted whether or not school is online or in person. Part of our job as a university is protecting the safety and well-being of students while providing them an education on our campus. And with this, by allowing students that live in dorm housing to continue to leave the dorm and go to the outer Eugene area, possibly also then spreading it to the larger Blaine County community and having cases go up to outer people that are uninvolved with the University of Oregon is also a possibility. While I believe that predominantly online education is a great and positive direction, and I do understand that some labs do need that in-person component to be completed, we also need a better way than for students to communicate issues with their courses, with their professors, and with their departments. Because with this term, we've had a lot of complaints raised about the quality of online education, and a lot of them were unanswered or were very vaguely answered by kind of larger departments instead of by specific people in their department. And I think that often breaks the communication and the trust between the university and the student. So I think it's even hard to ask them to continue on with remote education and with having the dorms open still when we don't have that kind of communication levels. So for that reason, I just hope you all consider about the safety of students, number one, well-being at the top, and just think about the fact that while we may have good structures and rules in place on campus, that while not everyone may abide by those either. Some students will not wear a mask inside the dorm halls, and that's up to the students to report that, unfortunately. A lot of the system we have set up is based on students having to report a party that they've seen or having to tell on someone else. And that is not a very positive thing that students view amongst each other. And while most students at University of Oregon take this virus very seriously, and we are very strong advocates of safety and well-being, that does not mean that one person or that a group of people cannot seriously change that and seriously affect things. So thank you.
Thank you. Patrick or Mike, do you want to make any comment relative to Catherine's comments? And in particular, I guess if you could talk about, I know you've spent lots of hours worrying about this, what happens off campus too. So if you could respond to Catherine's comments and talk a little bit about how you think about the off-campus issues for students, I think it'd be helpful.
Sure. So I'll start and Patrick can add on. And Catherine, thank you for your comments because it's the sort of thing that we've been talking really around the clock. And I can say we are, as Patrick indicated, we are going to be identifying places where people can study, and we'll post the hours online so people can see where they are. Now, with regard to the dorms, you know, we made the decision to allow people to go into the dorms for one, the reason that you suggested. This is home for some students and there isn't an alternative place. In addition, we think actually students are going to want to come to Eugene, freshmen, just like sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And they're going to come regardless of whether the dorms are open or not. And we actually think we can provide a much safer environment, in more controlled environment in the residence halls than outside the residence halls, because we can test everyone, we can retest, we can monitor, we have resident advisors there, and we can also, importantly, a third, second reason for why we're opening up the dorms and why we're actually encouraging students who want to be here is we want students, when you start a university, you want to begin a university experience interacting with students and getting a sense and developing friends, developing community, and starting to make the connections that you'll have for a lifetime. And given the fact that our instruction is going to be predominantly remote, the classroom is no longer going to be the place where you make those connections and where you interact with people. For freshmen, it will be in the residence halls. And so what we're doing is we're making that opportunity available. We're going to enhance activities in the residence halls with a faculty fellows program, with ARCs and FIGs, a whole series of things. And we think we can manage it, and we're going to be on the lookout for instances where we are not able to. So I think those are the reasons why we've decided to take this action. I think we'll actually be safer with this than not doing this. Now, what Chuck suggests and an implication of what was just said is, on the outside, we maintain much less control. Students are going to be moving to Eugene no matter what we do, right there. This is, many students rented apartments 4 or 5 months ago. Many students are here now. Many students will be coming because they don't want to live in their parents' home anymore. And this is, for many students, home. So a challenge for us, and actually where we're seeing the problems develop in other universities, is not in the residence halls. It's outside the residence halls. And that is going to be a challenge for us. And because we don't control the places where people live. But what we will do is we are going to be running student campaigns. We've talked to the ASUO. We are working with journalism students. We have a campaign about masks. We have, we're talking about an additional, the possibility of a pledge. We will really rely both on peer pressure, which we think is the number one, the most convincing way of approaching this. But we're also talking about how we as a university can, through our student conduct proceedings, make sure that students really take into their actions, what the implications of what they do on other people are. So that is actually the biggest challenge that we have right now. And we're working on that night and day to really come up with the best solution that we can. Patrick, do you want to add anything to that, since it's so important?
Sure. I'm not sure I have a lot to add, just to emphasize that obviously students don't have to choose to live in dorms. And so that is not a forced situation. We will see actually what the student response is in terms of overall density. As you see, again, the point of this meeting is the safety report that the dorms have already been de-densified. In terms of university responsibility, just to emphasize the president's point, in some degree, it's more responsible for us to have the students be with us, for us to provide safe testing, for us to have quarantine spaces for these students, to push them out in the community. And again, getting back to, I think, Jimmy's point, the challenges at other universities have not been on campus, they've been off campus. And then the off-campus problems come on campus. And so it is worth being concerned about how those interactions work. And there's no perfect way forward here. And we continue to look at other institutions, and we are hopeful that there will be highly successful models. But again, it gets down to what the background rate of the actual incidence of the disease is, and whether or not we can keep that under check through normal behavioral measures.
Okay, Alan, we're going to come to you next, and then after Alan, Laura Lee, I know you have a question as well. So go ahead, Alan.
A real quick question for Patrick. This comes into laboratory work. What is our protocol relative both to the research and to normal course study?
That's great, and I'm glad you brought up the research, because priority for me is that we have a clear focus on our educational mission, but we're a Research One university, and research activities are central, and those can be supported in a variety of ways, including through research labs and creative practice for faculty, as well as access to their own office for their scholarly work. So we actually implemented in the case of labs, a lab-by-lab evaluation and protocols. So our research operations have been largely open for a couple of months now without incident. And that's the same rules, de-densifying the spaces, mask use mandatory, except when you're by yourself in an office or a space, hand washing, those kinds of things. I'm hopeful and looking forward to expanded testing use so that we can also do that on a voluntary basis for staff who are on campus. I think that will be a useful addition, although it's not, again, in Lane County, these behavioral measures seem to be doing a great job. Same thing for then teaching labs. Research and teaching labs are perhaps the most controlled environment because we have already safety protocols in those environments. We already have students who are used to being trained as well as experienced in that. And probably the labs that we'll be focusing on are mostly the upper division labs, so we'll have experienced students who are used to those kinds of protocols. So I think that those spaces are very good, and we have now a great track record. And I would say that I'm in regular contact with all the Pac-12 schools, and there's been essentially no incidents in research labs, very few of transmission, and only via mistakes. So I think that's the very least of our worries. Not that we should take anything for granted, not that risk is zero, but we're doing a good job, and I think all schools are.
Thank you.
Okay, Laura Lee, I think you're next.
So thank you, Chuck. I think the institution's efforts to develop testing are nothing short of, incredible over the last few months. And I feel as confident, I think, as anyone can feel right now at our plan for our freshmen coming into residence halls. And I think we still continue to be more vulnerable off campus, as President Schill and Provost Phillips have talked about. And I think that's what, so my question really is, how do we develop the contact tracing capacity to handle that increased volume when, we're going to have those positive cases? We absolutely will. And I think we're taking very preventative actions with those students that are coming to campus. And then to sort of address Catherine's questions or points about, there will be intermingling, of course, and off-campus students will come to campus. They will study in our libraries. They will be in our buildings. They will be in our rec center. They will be in whatever building is open. And so I think that's really where a robust contact tracing effort needs to be able to manage those new cases. And so we're also reliant on Lane County's health authority. And so if could someone just kind of talk about how we're working with them, how we're maybe developing those efforts to expand the contact tracing, because I think that's going to be critical with what the rest of our year looks like and how we're going to be able to manage this.
I'm happy to start, and then Cassie and some of my colleagues can chime in. So I think everybody's familiar with hopefully with the Corona Corps that we have stood up. That when we talk about partnering with Lane County Public Health, we knew from the get-go that contact tracing testing were going to be key. And that's where the university, again, kind of stepped in boldly. And again, the researchers, Leslie's team and folks have been amazing on the testing side. And equally, we should be very proud of the students that we have now trained and have increased our capacity to do contact tracing. What's really critical here is our contact tracing efforts, meaning the Corona Corps, operate underneath Lane County. So one of the things that with our decision to go primarily remote, but knowing that we'll have residential facilities on, Lane County, as we're talking today, is basically developing what the strategy is, how we upstaff the contact tracing. And again, the benefit of going a little bit later, meaning starting later, is we've seen where these needs are. And so we have a pipeline of students to bring into the contact tracing and case management. And we're fully intending to, whatever the county needs and staffing that up, continue to fill that pipeline. And I think for some of my background of being an applied researcher on campus, I'm also really excited that this is our students, that we're presenting a service learning opportunity for our students to be involved in this. And I think to Catherine's point of, again, we're navigating uncharted water here, all of us. And so how we utilize our resources as an institution, our personnel, to not only make sure our campus is safe, but the community is. So we are upstaffing on that contact tracing. And quite frankly, we're realizing that bringing the students into the res halls, that we'll also have students moving into the community. So looking at fall term, making sure we always have extra contact tracers at our beck and call, so that if we see something, because we expect there'll be spikes here and there, that does not become a problem. And I don't know, Cassie, if you have anything to add on kind of the contact tracing and case management, because you've been working with the health folks on that.
Yeah, I'd also add that we're working on an arrangement with Lane County Public Health also to provide case management support, which is essentially resource assistance to cases from among our university population. Their job is to provide case management and resource assistance to any case, but they are interested in our supporting them when it comes to cases specific to our community, in part because we have resources that are not available to just any old community member, right? We have specific resources for our students with regard to food insecurity, mental health support, the Student Health Center, and those sorts of resources, and financial resources as well. And so to be able to connect our students directly to those resources, as well as resources that are available to them through that they would have as any other community member, is going to be important. And so we're working to develop what we're calling the COVID care response team in partnership with Lane County.
Great, thank you, Cassie. So I think Marcia is next, and then after Marcia, Mary, I know you have a question. So Marcia, go ahead.
Yeah, one is I just have a technical question on page 6. I don't know enough about Oregon's monitoring. So just do all of the factors have to be met to move one direction or another on the matrix, or is it one? I'm just curious. Is it one item or is it all?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's actually really an amalgam. So again, definitely disease prevalence and disease kind of control elements have a heavier weight. And so that's one of the reasons that on the matrix, where we look at the indicators, we tried to clearly identify which of those are Lane County and our public health authority tracking. But equally, we also then need to be looking at capacity elements. Again, our ability to, whether that's isolation capacity, whether it's compliance with kind of public health elements. So it isn't just one singular. Of course, if we would see a spike in prevalence, generally that's going to have us lean a little bit faster towards containment. And again, if that containment isn't available, then you're looking at, and that's where our alert levels comply and correlate with the Oregon reopening phases. So it'd be the same that you've heard in Oregon of whether we would be able to maintain phase 1 or go to phase 2. I think the difference with what we're looking at is both disease prevalence indicators that are in the overarching community and how that correlates to what's on campus, but also the capacity to do containment and tracing.
Great, thank you. And then, like others, being here in Los Angeles, where we've had a big outbreak at SC, and they are 100% remote and have not opened the dorms, and obviously we've been on the news a lot for our case count. I'm curious if we have thought about working, what our working relationship with Eugene is to implement certain things. Like in LA now, the mayor can shut down party houses, which I could see being an issue perhaps in the city, knowing young people. And then I'm wondering if we've thought of anything as significant as what Purdue has put in place in terms of, code of conduct and how serious, we're thinking about suspension and those types of activities. And at the same time, if we're considering those, how do we make sure that we don't have equity issues where only certain student groups are targeted for suspension?
I can start at kind of the high level, meaning we have been since, all the way back into spring, working very closely with Oregon Health Authority, with the other public universities and private and community colleges. And one of the things that we did earlier this week, because again, we know there's the elements that we can control on our campus of kind of making sure that we set up an environment that is not conducive to spread. And then there's what you're talking about in the community. And we are petitioning OHA to add another FAQ at the bare minimum to call out collegiate, non-affiliated, off-campus activities, to be real clear about what that means. And that means that house party and what the requirements are. And so we're working in partnership with the other public universities and, quite frankly, all the universities, because we all have this concern. So starting with OHA. And then to your point on the city and the county, that then telegraphs down, meaning if we can have OHA be clear on what their guidance is, and again, they're aware of what's going on nationally, so that giving us that some authority at the state level to kind of say this means you too, then working in close concert with the city of Eugene and Lane County Public Health. And I'll let Cassie hit on any points that I missed, that we are working very closely to work with the property managers, so our large housing complexes near campus, making sure that they're aware, asking them what they're doing, and trying to support where we can, including also then the FSL and our Greek system, making sure. So part of that is, one, making it clear that this does relate to you and your activities, but then trying to assist in providing resources. And we've actually had interest from and are taking Peace Health has infectious disease control specialists, of saying we can even offer up resources that if somebody would like us to look at our plans, and that us is Lane County Public Health, the city fire marshal, Peace Health, infectious disease controls, making that available, because again, we know that it's part of the greater community, and we have authorities over our property, but we don't over others. But that doesn't mean there's not stuff that we can do in that space to really kind of, one, make sure that they're aware of the exposures and the risks, and then help them in developing plans, and if they need somebody to take a look from a professional side, that may not be somebody at the university, but we have commitments from our partners at the hospitals and infectious disease control experts to assist in those areas, because they have the same concern we do. And I don't know, Cassie, if there's anything I've missed, but that is something we are very focused on right now, of how do we shore that up to the level that we can legally, and do everything in our power to assist on that side.
I don't want to, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and Mike, I'm just thinking about, in terms of, there's been a number of, we obviously all know what's happening in Kenosha and elsewhere, but there've been a number of things happening on college campuses related to college police and how they, how they interact with and deal with particularly Black students as well as Black faculty. And I'm just curious, I know this, and maybe you don't have to answer it now because it may not fit within this, but I think that I'd love for, for that to be a topic at some point, for us to make sure that we are not disproportionately, there's not any sort of disproportionate as we look at policing statistics related to our Black students and our Black faculty.
I know we do have the topic on we have that topic on a future board meeting agenda. So maybe, Marcia, if we can wait until we get to, because I think it'll be dealt with very thoroughly. Not that it wouldn't be here, but okay. So Mary, I think you have a question.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chuck. And first, I just want to thank everyone who's been involved in this plan. It's incredibly comprehensive and innovative. Andre, the work that everyone has done has just really been fabulous. And my question has to do with external communications, and particularly direct outreach to one group of stakeholders who I know are very concerned, and that would be parents. And in reading through the plan, I see through section 14, specifically 2.1, that there are direct communications to students, to employees, and there are opportunities for parents to call in and for parents to take initiatives. And even in reading Appendix D, I thought there might be, if that's included in university communications. So my question is, it may be implied, but I didn't see it explicitly written, that direct email communication, and I'm not talking about personal health information, but I'm talking about number of cases, updates, and some of those other areas that you are sending to employees and students. Is there any plan to be giving some of the nervous parents, particularly of freshmen, an update just on what the case number is and so forth?
So, you know, I don't think Roger is with us right now on the freshman issue, but I know that I'm going to be doing a sort of a town hall with freshmen, incoming freshmen. I believe it could be even tomorrow. It's going to be very soon. And the parents are, I think we have more parents than students at those sort of things. So we broadcast that widely. Also, the note that we're sending out to freshmen is shared with parents. Now, do we have something that is specific to parents and not to students? I don't think we're addressing that directly, but I'll be happy to speak with Roger about that and whether we're, as part of the orientation program, doing that. Most of the communications that we do are directly with our students and not with the parents alone.
Right. And I'm talking about updates though, because I think as parents send their students off to particularly residence halls, I'm talking about the updates and wondering, now school has started, what is the case count? What are the updates? What is going on? And I just know that the external communications are extremely important for not only the community wants to know, but I think in particular the parents who are have trusted the university with their children.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea. We don't have the, unfortunately, we don't have the contact information for all of the parents. We have the contact information for the students, but what we do have is a hotline. So, which is we're getting calls from parents particularly since yesterday, which is in which we respond back. Facebook. I get phone calls and which I respond to, and so there's any number of ways, but we don't have a direct parent email system because we don't have their emails. But it'd be a great idea to do that.
Well,
Yep.
one thing would be just to ask at the orientation or at some point any parent who would like to supply their email to be kept on the regular updates. That's
we definitely can bring that back to kind of the communication side. And for the channels that do exist, meaning there is a parent group that Student Life monitors, and we are forwarding any of the messaging there. And just, again, really kind of the forward-facing element of our plan is the website. And so again, I think definitely as the president is saying, we can take that back and look at any opportunity to allow people to jump on. But I know through the channels that we have, whether it's social media, things like that, we are kind of pushing that messaging out. And as it relates to case counts and testing, again, it's on our page, and we're going to continue to enhance that. And where we can, kind of, the information that should be publicly available, we're going to have it there and draw attention to that. But that's a great idea of any opportunities we can to, again, allow people to connect. But if you haven't gone through the website, I know it's a lot, but there's a lot there, and we're going to really try to hone in and focus so that where people are looking for interest, that they know where it is.
I will just add, I mistakenly put it in the chat to avoid taking up airspace, but we do have a Parent and Families Programs website and a whole office, as Andre mentioned, and on that website you can sign up. Parents can sign up to receive updates and join that community.
Okay, Marcia, I just got a text message from Angela that the comprehensive review relative to the University of Oregon Police Department is on the September board schedule, so it's soon. And I think we have, Lisa, you had a question you wanted to ask, I believe.
It's kind of been in the discussion, and Cassie, you bringing up that good point that our freshmen living in the dorms might be safer because they get their mental health and their medical, and they're able to do that. And President Schill, you mentioned perhaps a pledge that could be put into place for the students that are living off campus. So I'm kind of wondering, the students in the dorms, is it a mandatory testing to live in the dorms and mandatory to continue the testing? And then also, can we do something like that for the students off campus before you come on campus to use our facilities? There will be a mandatory testing of some sort. I really don't know how the logistics of that would work, but I don't know if that's something that the university can control.
So Leslie may want to add something to this, but one, it is mandatory. The testing to live in our dorm or in our residence halls is mandatory. So that's you can't get your keys unless you do that. It's more tricky off campus because we're remote, so we can't tie mandatory testing to taking classes in person, since we're not requiring people to be in person. If someone wants to walk across into campus and go into the EMU, it's very hard unless we issued ID. I mean, it just, the logistics of that become sort of difficult. We certainly haven't decided to do that. In addition, at the moment, we are going to be using, and Leslie can correct me on this, at the beginning of the quarter, we're going to be using most of our testing capacity on freshmen in dorms and on contacts and on diagnostic testing. So ultimately, over time, we are developing the ability to add lots more tests. And that's one of the reasons why we believe that we'll be able to be in person in the winter term, because we'll have testing for everyone. But at the moment, it really will just be on-demand testing. I don't know, Leslie, do you want to comment on that? Did I mess anything up?
Yeah, I agree with what you said. I think, you can think of it like, if you have a certain number of tests per day, whether that's 500, 1,000 or whatever, and they are a valuable resource. And if there is a situation where we have an outbreak or lots of contacts, we would want to prioritize all of those tests for those higher risk populations. And so having a mandate for somebody who might just walk onto campus and not really come anywhere near it, anybody else might not be the best use of that test on that day. And in addition, and Andre, you may chime in, there's the current guidance from Oregon Health Authority advises that we not have mandatory testing for employees as a point of course in their employment. So I'll turn it over to you, Andre, if I didn't quite express the OHA guidance correctly.
No, that's correct. So I mean, I think it's no mystery that we do not have the testing capacity as a country that we hope to have had at this point. So there is, as Leslie had pointed out, we have to be very targeted with our testing. This is also an opportunity that testing is one component. It's one pillar that, when we do modeling, looking at spread, mask utilization, the 6 feet of separation, that's what cuts down the spread. The test is not a vaccine. It's a very powerful tool that we can use to look at containment and tracing down infection. But as Leslie said, our hope, and as the president stated, our hope, and I mean, we're working diligently. Again, the researchers that have dropped everything to do this are just phenomenal. When I look at where we're at with other state agencies we're talking to, we are leading of kind of saying, you know what, we're in our one research center. Let's put our heads together and figure out how we do this. And so we do believe that over the next several months, we're going to increase that testing capacity, but that is not the single solution, because at the same time that we increase the testing capacity, and I think Laura Lee had brought this up, we've got to increase the contact tracing. So it's kind of these couplings that we need to do. And we're right at that corner that we're about to turn, where we're going to be utilizing some new testing technology that allows us to really amplify this. And I'll let Leslie hit this, because I know it's important that the people that understand this speak to this. But again, we have that diagnostic testing. We have testing that we're doing for fall term around screening for our congregate living. And then we have what would consider randomized, or people don't like the word surveillance testing, but that's a prevalence-based test. That's where we're hoping to kind of turn with the county here soon, where we don't have to test everybody to get the understanding of what's going on in the community. And I think it's worthwhile for the board to hear a little bit more about that, because I know we get lots of questions. Should we test everybody before they walk in? We really got to turn the corner to this surveillance base, so that we have a better understanding of the community. We have that built into our metric. It's not live yet, but we're hoping it'll be live here soon with the county.
Maybe I could just, again, just amplify on 2 points, just from a policy point of view, and get right to your question. The first thing is that actually we're not test limited right now, we're contact trace limited. I just want to emphasize that. And we don't control that, the county does. So it's incumbent on us to partner with the county to continue to backfill with them. And I think that this is a great public-public kind of story, but it's incomplete at this time. And getting back to the fall, this is part of why we are in the stance that we are for the fall. But I'm very hopeful, getting to Andre's point, by the winter, we actually can be at a place. And I think it'd be interesting, when we come back, maybe to give you an update. It might need to be an interim update late in the fall, whether or not we are able to implement policies that have a little more gating for in-person. The thing that hasn't come up that I expected to hear is that, just to reassure everybody, even for in-person experiences, students do not have to choose ever to be in person. And we're very respectful of the fact that many students don't want to be in person and or can't be in person for health reasons. And so that will always be the case. So we will always be accommodating students not in person anyways. And so that does allow us the potential for creating more gating for what in-person could look like in the winter, but that still needs to be worked out. And this is all part of why we're trying to be a little more patient with ourselves through the fall, so that we can get all of these things in order, so that when we move, and this gets back to Jimmy's question, why are we different? We may not be different. It's impossible to predict. But what we're trying to do is not foolishly rush through anything. And hopefully, if that's a distinguishing feature and we're able to pull this out, that will be a hallmark of what this leadership is trying to do. So we're just trying to be very careful as we move forward.
Terrific. Well, I don't see any other hands for questions, but I'll ask. Any last question for anyone before we consider this resolution?
Yeah, I don't have a question. I guess it's more of a comment. Patrick, Mike, I'm very excited to hear about the potential for opening up more spaces on campus for student study spaces. It warms my heart to hear the library brought up so often as a resource that will be available to students. I can say that we have a maximum of about 700 seats total in the libraries, and there's a lot of anxiety from employees about, the banging on the doors of day one of students who are excited to see us. So anything we can do to expand access to space on campus, which is really what students want, I think will go a long way to helping everyone feel safe. Thank you.
Yeah, we've got some great spaces. We were talking today about potentially Tyson. We were talking about obviously the EMU and these classrooms that we've retrofitted that now we're not going to use for in-person teaching. So we're going to match that up with where the ventilation systems can be adjusted, and where we've already physically spaced areas. So we're on it.
Michael, Patrick, or Andre, any last comment? Okay, well, thank you. Great job, everybody. You all have in your packet the resolution relative to the approval of the U of O's health and safety operational plan relative to the COVID-19 virus. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
So moved.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
And
Second.
Okay, thank you. And one last check. Any other comment before we vote? Okay, Angela, I think we should do a roll call.
Okay, we will go alphabetically. Marcia Aaron.
Yes.
Peter Bragdon.
Yes.
Andrew Colas.
Yes.
Alan Ford.
Yes.
Joe Gagne.
Yes.
Elisa Horniker,
Yes.
Ross Carey,
Yes.
Chair Lillis,
Yes.
Laura Lee McIntyre,
Yes.
Jimmy Murray,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ralph,
Yes.
Connie Seeley,
Yes.
Mary Wilcox,
Yes.
Catherine Wishna.
No.
Okay, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Be safe, take good care of yourselves. We'll see you we'll see ourselves at a September board meeting. So thank you. And Mike and Patrick and Angela and Andre, thanks very much. Good meeting.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.